Hello, hello. Welcome to the May Community Stand-Up for Blazor. My name is Tanay, and we have with us the one and only Dan Roth. Hi, Dan.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here again.
Great to have you. Today, we have a really exciting community stand-up ahead of us. We're going to be talking today about Blazor MAUI and how to actually build an app. So we're going to start off with, say, something like a Blazor WebAssembly application, and we're going to take you through the overall process on how we can transition that into a Blazor Hybrid MAUI application. .NET MAUI application. So to start off, we're going to do a couple of community links. This is just where we share cool stuff that's been happening in the community, some good resources that you may be able to use. And from there, we'll head right into Dan's demo. So it should be pretty exciting. Let's get started. So I will show that banner just so you have access to the link. And okay, cool. You should be able to see my screen now. These are the community links. Let's hop right into them. The first link here is a really interesting plugin, or more so just a demonstration of how to integrate with this plugin.fingerprint NuGet package that actually allows you to have biometric authentication in your .NET MAUI application. So this gives you a step-by-step guide, essentially the NuGet package that you have to install, as well as the APIs that you can use. And from here, you can hop right into full-on biometric, say, fingerprint authentication or something of that sort that you may have on your mobile device. So this really shows how .NET MAUI allows you to leverage a lot of really cool and neat platform-specific capabilities and functionality. So that's this link. And if that's something you're interested in, definitely check this out.
Leveraging native features. That's nice. Yeah.
For sure. The next link here is from Progress Telerik, and it's actually a webinar that just happened a couple of hours ago, or may actually be still going on. I'm not entirely sure. And it is just kind of like a release or a demo of a bunch of really great functionality that they've been adding recently. So a bunch of 100 native Blazor components, as well as different stuff for .NET MAUI, docs, demos, and a whole lot more. So I believe you have to register for the webinar here, but it should be a lot of really interesting components and features available within the ecosystem if you're interested with this.
I think they shipped just shipped a whole bunch of new Blazor UI components and improvements. I assume that's what Ed's going to be talking about and showing. So that's exciting.
Yep, it looks like it just came out last week, so this is like right hot off the press. Okay. The next link here is for Blazor WebAssembly for Headless CMS on Azure Static Web Apps. Let's break this down, a couple of acronyms here. CMS, Content Management System. So a popular example of this could be something like WordPress. So essentially what this article here is about is you have a WordPress site already, but you aren't really happy with the existing UI or front end of the WordPress site. This actually shows you how you can use a Blazor WebAssembly frontend, which is just statically hosted on Azure Static Web Apps, and then just connect with the WordPress backend. So WordPress stores its data into a MySQL database. So this essentially takes you through the process of setting up a API proxy for the MySQL database, and then the Blazor WebAssembly application is just able to communicate, get the data that way, and you're able to have a Blazor WebAssembly application that actually shows all your existing WordPress content. So there's a few steps involved, but it's fairly straightforward. And in the end, you do get like a fully featured blog or whatever using Blazor WebAssembly. So I thought it was really cool and wanted to share that with you.
I like how they're using Azure Static Web Apps. Occasionally, I still run into folks that are deploying directly to Azure Storage as a static website hosting solution, which you can still do. There's some basic, really rudimentary web hosting support there in just raw Azure Storage. But if you use Azure Static Web Apps, you get a whole bunch of really nice features because they directly integrate with Blazor. Like they know about Blazor WebAssembly apps. So they'll handle things like the SPA style routing, where you want deep links to kind of get fall back to the root of the app so that the client router can kick in. They'll handle redirecting to the pre-compressed files. Like when you publish a Blazor WebAssembly app, we do a whole bunch of optimizations on the output of that publish so that the app is as small as possible, and including pre-compressing the output files using Brotli at like the highest settings that we can do. You just need some logic though that correctly redirects requests for those files to the pre-compressed files. Azure Static Web Apps just handles all that for you. They have the whole .NET WebAssembly build tool chain up there. So when you're doing your like build pipeline, they know how to handle AOT and runtime relinking and all those things. So it's a really nice solution if you're looking for a place to host your Blazor WebAssembly app.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to the next two links here. These are just posts from the community. This one is from Eagle, and he's mentioning how BUnit recently surpassed 1 million downloads. So for those who may not be too familiar with this, BUnit is essentially a very popular unit testing framework for Blazor, and like as you can see here, it's been on a steady uptick and recently surpassed 1 million users. So that's really exciting, and congrats to the entire BUnit team.
Yeah. And thank you everyone who's been supporting him on that effort. You know, it started out as a labor of love, and I know a lot of people have been helping out and giving them support. So that's great to see.
Yeah, for sure. And on another exciting note, Blazorize has also surpassed 1 million downloads.
Wow.
So this is another popular component library for Blazor. We actually had one of the core contributors and creators of the framework on a few months back. So that community stand-up is also available on YouTube. But yeah, they recently surpassed 1 million downloads. So big congrats to them as well.
I think that's I don't know if I've seen that logo for them. It must be a newer logo, or I'm just behind the times. It's been a while since I looked at them.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. This definitely looks new. It's a really nice refresh.
Congrats.
Okay.
Blazorize, folks.
Congrats to them. Okay, so that basically wraps it up for the community links for today. And from here, we're gonna head right off and give it to Dan, who's going to be showing us all the wonderful stuff with .NET MAUI and Blazor.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Blazor hybrid scenarios. I do have a couple slides today. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen real quick. We've been talking about this now for a number of months, that we're working very hard on, or we've been working very hard on taking Blazor beyond the web. So that you can reuse not only your .NET skills, but also your web development skills to build native client applications. This is an effort that is actually getting close to wrapping up. We're near the end of near the finish line of shipping an actual stable and supported release of what we call Blazor hybrid support. If you've been watching the .NET MAUI blog posts, they just shipped another release candidate update. I think they're up to release candidate 3. So we're getting really near the end there. One of these builds is probably going to be the final build that we're going to ship very, very soon. So like I was saying, the goal of what we're doing with Blazor and that .NET MAUI release is that if you're a web developer, if you know HTML and you know CSS, but you need to do something that is where the web platform itself is insufficient, like there's things that you need native access to on the device, like full access to native platform features. Well, we're going to allow you to take your Blazor components and host them directly in a native client application. So you can have Blazor UI running not only on the web, but also natively on desktop and natively on mobile. This is a parallel release with the .NET MAUI release. So .NET MAUI is our cross-platform UI story for .NET. Specifically native UI, like you want to use the latest, best UI story for the platform that you're on. Like if you're on Windows, using WinUI 3, if you're on Android, using the Android widgets, iOS, Mac OS. MAUI gives you cross-platform abstractions over the user interface, over native UI, and also native platform features like authentication, the gyroscope, geolocation, and so forth. MAUI is shipping shortly, and we have integrated Blazor support into MAUI by providing a Blazor web view control that will let you run your Blazor components in a MAUI application and then just render them to an embedded web view, like a little embedded browser control. So you're still doing HTML and CSS, but you're able to take advantage of native client features because your Blazor components are running right there on the device. There's no WebAssembly involved in this setup. We're not running your components in the browser on WebAssembly, then packaging that up in a native client app. We're running your components on a normal .NET runtime along with all the other .NET code that you have in your MAUI application. And those components then render to a web view instead of using native UI. And that has advantages if you want to reuse components from your web app, or you have components that you've already built up, or you just are more comfortable with HTML and CSS. So that's what we've been working on with the MAUI folks, and that's built into MAUI. We're not just doing Blazor Hybrid, though, for MAUI. We also have Blazor Web View controls for WPF and Windows Forms applications. And I think this is a great way for you to modernize these existing desktop apps. If you've got an existing desktop app and you're looking for a path to get it to the web or maybe to a cross-platform MAUI app, you can put in a Blazor Web View control in your WPF or WinForms app, start adding web UI using Blazor. You can maybe whittle away at existing UI and replace it. And that new UI now can be used on a web app or can be used in a .NET MAUI application. So Blazor Hybrid support for MAUI, WPF, and WinForms. And this is
I think,
yeah. Go ahead,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was just going to add, I think that's really, really interesting because we often get the question of how can we take an existing application that we already have for and we've had for many years or something along those lines, but we want to modernize it, but we can't really afford to move everything overall at once. We want to kind of do it gradually. And with Blazor Hybrid for WPF and WinForms, that's a great opportunity to kind of do a piecewise migration. You can start moving the bits that say are most used or most in demand, and gradually move the whole application towards the new style or new formatting that you want.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Right, and so how does this work? That's what hopefully this slide will help to clarify, because a lot of people ask, like, well, is it like wrapping a web server? Are you using WebAssembly? There's no WebAssembly or even a server endpoint involved with a Blazor Hybrid app. And by Blazor Hybrid, I mean this is yet another hosting model for Blazor components. We have Blazor Server, which will host your components on the server and then render to a browser over a real-time connection. We have Blazor WebAssembly, which instead hosts your components client-side in the browser on a WebAssembly-based .NET runtime. Now we're going to have Blazor Hybrid, which hosts your Blazor components directly in a native client app and just renders them to a local web view control. So there's no browser sandbox in this case around your components. If you want to do stuff with a file system, you can do that. If you need to talk to the network, you can do that. I saw there was a question in here about, like, can I do Bluetooth LE communication in my Android app from Blazor? Yes, you can do that, because .NET MAUI provides .NET APIs and abstractions over a whole variety of native platform features. There's a bunch that are built in, and then if they don't provide the API specifically that you need, but the underlying platform does, you can of course always just then do native interop and create a .NET API that calls into that corresponding functionality. So sky's the limit. Whatever the device can do in this model, you are able to do, because you're not running in the browser. You're running kind of next to it and just using the browser as like your canvas, your HTML and CSS canvas. So that's how this works. And what I thought we would do in this session, we're getting close to release. Thought we would show a little bit more of actually building what it's like to build apps with Blazor Hybrid. And specifically the scenario that I thought we'd look at is where you're starting with a web app. Like, you have a web presence already, and there's something that you either want or need from the native client, and you want to take your web app and turn it into a native client and light up those features. You probably still want to keep your web application, or maybe not. Maybe you're deciding to go fully native. Either is fine. How can you then do that? That is possible with this model, and you can then share UI across mobile, desktop, and web. So let's take a look at how that works. Let me pop out of slides. And so I thought we'd start simple. I'm just going to start with the project template. And Tanay, if there's any questions that you see popping up that you think we should handle live, go ahead and just interrupt. That's totally fine.
Sure. Just a quick question. Someone in the chat mentioned. So if my component uses the JS runtime to invoke JavaScript, then would that not work in a hybrid scenario, or is it fully
Perfect.
supported?
Awesome question. Yeah, it does work. I mean, the browser is there, and the browser can run JavaScript, so you can use Blazor's JavaScript interop mechanisms to run JavaScript then as part of your Blazor Hybrid app. The way you can think about Blazor Hybrid is it's very much actually like Blazor Server. It's just that instead of having a big, long network connection with the browser, it's all just right there on the device. So Blazor Server, you can do JavaScript interop, and the way that works is we send the JavaScript, the thing that you want to execute down to the browser, we run it, and then we send the response back to the server and vice versa. Same thing can happen in a Blazor Hybrid app. It's just the channel of communication is much shorter. So the same IJS runtime abstraction works just fine in a Blazor Hybrid application.
Awesome. And just kind of related to that note, this person here is asking, how exactly is the DOM manipulated in MAUI plus Blazor WebView? So I think this kind of relates very well with your previous answer, where with Blazor WebView with .NET MAUI, it's all the actual DOM and DOM manipulation and all that kind of stuff is fairly similar. So you aren't really going to have to rethink how you approach different applications or how you may want to optimize things. A lot of stuff that you know and are familiar with on the Blazor side of things are going to work really well with Blazor Hybrid already.
Yep. We will put a little bit of JavaScript into the WebView control, kind of like you have blazor.server.js that we download to the browser to set up the connection back to the server in a Blazor server application, and then all the DOM diffing gets sent back and forth over the wire as UI events happen. That's the same pattern that will happen in a Blazor Hybrid app, just over a much shorter channel. So your components will render on the device. They will handle the UI events. The components will run. They'll figure out what do they want to update in the DOM. That delta will then get sent over that little channel to the Blazor WebView control and applied to the live DOM. So that the pattern for rendering is the same. The speed improvements that you get will come from the fact that, well, you're running right there locally on the device. There's very little latency like there would be potentially in a Blazor server app when you're trying to do this across the internet. You're also executing your rendering logic, your actual components natively on the device. You're not on WebAssembly, so that code runs fast. You know, it's either ahead of time compiled like on an iOS device, or it has a normal JIT-based runtime like if you're running on Windows. So it's fast, full access to native features, but you'll be able to use your existing web UI skills and functionality.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, definitely. If anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. But for now, Dan, please go ahead.
All right, let's go ahead and create a Blazor app. Let's imagine we're starting with a web app. I'm going to create a Blazor server app just to start with. Could be Blazor WebAssembly. We'll do a Blazor WebAssembly app a little bit later. So just imagine this is your Blazor app that you've worked very hard on, and it's working great. And then you hear about .NET MAUI and Blazor Hybrid, and you want to turn this into a native client application. To make this app a little bit more interesting, I'm going to go ahead and add a project to this solution. Let's add a Razor class library. Got it right here in my recent list. Razor class library is just a normal .NET class library that's set up to build Razor files, to build Blazor components. There we go. And I'm just going to reference that from my app. There we go. And then I should be able to then now add a component from that app. This app has a very simple component, one.razor. It's just a div, has a little bit of CSS styling and like a background image that both come from the class library. You can think of this class library as like your library of components that you've been building up as you've been working with Blazor, or maybe it's a library of components that you're getting from an open source project like Blazorize, or from a vendor like DevExpress, Telerik, Syncfusion, and so forth. Existing Blazor web UI components that you want to continue to use. Okay, so I'm going to add one of these components to the home page of the app. Let's add component 1.
Dan, could you please zoom a bit?
Good.
A bit more, if that's all right. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, that's huge for me. Okay, cool. And then let's go ahead and run this. Make sure that it's working. Of course, it popped over here on my other screen. Okay, so we've got our Blazor app 11 application, and we've got a component that's coming from Razor class library 1. that's rendering on the page. This is our web app. It's working great. Now, what I want to do is turn this into a native client app. I'm going to use .NET MAUI to do that. So to do that, I'm just going to add a new first I'm going to add the new project, and let's add a .NET MAUI Blazor app to our solution. How did I get this project template? If you're in the Visual Studio installer, you're going to want to go and let's do this one. You're going to want to make sure that you have the MAUI workload installed in addition to the web workload. So I've got the web workload installed as well as this .NET multi-platform app UI, which is the long name for MAUI. Make sure you've got that, and then those templates will show up. I'll give you everything you need. Okay, so let's create one of those and add that to our solution. Perfect. Now, at this point, it would be tempting to say, oh, well, I'm now just going to right-click on my MAUI app and add a project reference to my Blazor app and hope that would just work. And that's actually one of the things that I've seen a number of users stumble on. You actually can't or shouldn't do that. And I'll try to explain why. For first issue is that your Blazor app probably might have a bunch of dependencies that are going to be web specific. Like that's the app that you are literally going to want to deploy to the web. It might have a bunch of stuff in it that you don't even really need in a MAUI application. Some of that stuff also might not even work in a MAUI application. For example, in a Blazor server app, Blazor server apps are just normal ASP.NET Core applications, which means they have a framework reference, not a package reference, a whole framework reference to all of ASP.NET Core implicitly by virtue of using the web SDK. Currently, there is no support for ASP.NET Core in MAUI, like on an Android device, on mobile platforms in particular. There is no ASP.NET Core shared framework that can be put on those devices currently. There is a GitHub issue where people have asked for it and be like, hey, it'd be really great if we could actually run all of ASP.NET Core in these platforms. And if you care about that scenario, please go ahead and upvote that issue and let us know. But currently, it's not a thing that you can do. So if you reference the whole app, it'll actually fail. With Blazor WebAssembly, you can kind of get it to work. Blazor WebAssembly apps are just a DLL that targets, .NET 6 or .NET 7, whatever version of .NET you happen to be on. But again, it's still pulling in references for WebAssembly specific stuff, like the dev servers in there. There's WebAssembly specific authentication patterns and all that stuff. In general, the pattern that we recommend is you're going to want to take the components that you want to be common, and you want to pull them out into a separate class library, a shared component library that you can reuse with both your web application and with your MAUI application. And that's the pattern that we're going to be going through today. Okay. Now the MAUI app as is, it does run. Like we can set the MAUI app as the startup, and let's go ahead and run it on Windows just so we can see what it looks like. We've already set up this MAUI app to run Blazor components. It's already got a Blazor web view control, and so hopefully, if that's all working properly, we should see in this case, a Windows desktop app that has recognizable Blazor components running inside of it. There it is. So that looks familiar, except now notice this is not a web browser. There is a web view control. This is actually web view 2. And this is a native desktop app based on WinUI 3 and the Windows App SDK. But it's running our Blazor components just fine. If you haven't seen how that's set up before, I'll show you just real quick in mainpage.xaml. This is native UI. Like this is how you write native UI components in MAUI. But the only real MAUI control that's in this app is this Blazor web view. And it's pointing to an HTML file, and then we're telling it, I would like to render this particular component. And that component, of course, is coming from a Razor file that right now lives directly in the MAUI project. Main Razor has the client-side router, and we've got counter, fetch data, and index up here above. Those are literally the same components that you would see in a Blazor web app. But we don't want any of those. We want to use the ones from our Blazor application. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's clean out the MAUI project. I'm going to delete all of the Razor files from the MAUI project because we're not going to use those. We're going to use the ones from our web application. Get rid of all this and shared. I think we can get rid of. Hopefully, I don't delete anything I'm not supposed to. All right, great. And then I want to start moving stuff out of my Blazor web app into, I'm just going to put them in the Razor class library that I've already got. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see, what do we want? We want yeah, we're going to want these data stuff. I think we have some data stuff in the Maui project too, so we'll get rid of that as well. So we're going to want these types. We're going to want shared. Let's grab imports and app.razor. We'll just grab all of that and just dump it in here. Yes, we'll override the existing spot. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to want to delete the stuff that I just got rid of. So I don't want to get rid of my CSHTML files. Those are still going to stay in the Blazor server app. So we're going to leave those. Those will do pre-rendering and all that fancy stuff. Let's get rid of the Razor files though. Good. And then we can get rid of data now. And we should.
So just so it's completely clear here, what you're doing right now is you have a Blazor server application already, and you have a bunch of components and stuff like that within the Blazor server application. But you want to use those components within your .NET MAUI application. Instead of just copying everything over into a .NET MAUI application, and then you have two separate copies of counter.razor and all that kind of stuff, and you have to maintain both of those separately, you're extracting all of them out into a RCL or a Razor class library, and you're going to reference that Razor class library on both projects, so it's accessible.
Exactly. That is exactly what we do. Shared single library of Blazor components, but with a web app and a MAUI app, so we can do mobile, desktop, and web. That's the goal. That's what we're going to try and get.
Awesome.
Okay. So I'm going to add a now project reference from my web app to Razor class library 1. That's already there. Okay. And now let's see, should it just run? I think so. I think I'm going to have some namespaces that are messed up when I've done this before. So like these weather forecast types, they're all sitting in Blazor app 1.data. We probably want to make this Razor class library. So let's go and just clean up some namespaces. And then in imports.razor, these namespaces, we probably want to be, whoops, Razor class library. And then we're not using authorization in the component library, so I'm just going to get rid of that. We don't that way we don't even have to pull in that dependency. Let me stop the web app so that I don't keep getting the hot reload asking if I want to restart. Okay, and that, let's see, is that it? I think we should have. Yeah, then we have to fix up these namespaces too. So that's going to be there. So this is now back in the, because I changed all the namespaces to Razor class library 1, we got to get rid of all the references over here that are referring to that. And there should be a, I think that's it. Is that it? I think in the layout, I should have a component in here someplace that refers to this. Yes, this guy. Here's where it's referring to the app component, and that's now in Razor class library 1.
That's how you know you're doing a lot of Blazor dev. You have Blazor app 11.
That's right. Let's build. Let's see if it works. Okay. Well, obviously we've missed some. Let's take a look and see where we've missed some errors. We got a bunch. Let's see. So one of the files, I figured that Razor does not exist. What did I do here? What? Let's see. Did I mess up my dependencies? This is app project reference, Razor class 1. Why is it complaining about? I didn't check any. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. Let's make sure this one's building first. Okay. Oh, that's probably because no, I've got all those dependencies. Why is there MVC in here? Should be an MVC.
Could you open up the Razor class library CS barge?
Did I accidentally copy a CSHTML file? Oh, I did. I thought I meant to not copy those over. My bad. My bad. Okay, great. And everything else is Razor. Okay, great. Now let's see how we're doing with building. So you can build CSHTML files in a Razor class library, but that's not our goal here. We're just trying to build components. So now we're missing a weather forecast service directive in fetch data. Let's see, where's fetch data? That should have been resolved, I thought, by, oh, it's probably because of this. I need a using statement data. Okay, and then the other two errors. cannot be found. Yep, we don't have that namespace anymore. And then the last one, that should be resolved by the fact that I added the data namespace. Okay, so let's build our library. Okay, that's working. Now let's see if we can get our web app working again. And that looks like that says it's working. Okay, so now let's try running the Blazor app. That's of course going to pop up over here. Okay, that seems to be working. Let's to convince ourselves that that's really the case. And if anyone in the chat is like, it's not really working, you need to change let me know today. Let's see.
This looks good.
Everyone thinks that looks good.
Stuff is working. Auto reload and all that should work as well, I believe.
Okay, so yeah, I made a change in the Razor class library 1, and it got picked up in the web application. Perfect. Now, let's talk a little bit about the static web apps, static web assets, like all the static files that this app is using, like Bootstrap and whatever. Right now, I believe those are still coming from the web application. Like if I go look in the www root folder, I didn't bother to like move any of this other stuff out. Which you might decide not to, but then if you want that same styling to be carried with your components, anyone using those components won't get that same styling, or at least won't have it available to them. We can move this stuff too. So if I grab, I'm just going to grab all of the CSS stuff, and I'm going to dump that into my Razor class library, which also has a www root folder. We can put that in there. So now everything, all my CSS styles are now coming from the Razor class library project. But if I rerun this again, I would expect that we might have, I actually removed them. We might have an issue. Let's see.
Do we need site.css for the MAUI application?
Yes. I mean, we could reuse the one that's already in it. Why is my app not starting? Oh, that's weird. Like the browser isn't popping up for me. Let me go here. Okay, yes. And so now you can see we've got some bizarre styling issues going on. Why is that? Well, that's because the way the web app is set up is just to assume that all the static web assets are coming locally from the project. Now they're coming from a different library, which you can still reference, but the path changes. There's a special path that you use to reference static web assets from another library. So if we go into the index.html file, not index, I guess it's going to be the layout file here. You can see we've got all these paths that right now are assuming that these static web assets are coming off the root. But because they're coming from a library, we have to add a little prefix in here. We're going to add content.razor class library 1, CSS, and so forth. So let's go ahead and update this and this one. And is that all of them? I think that ought to do it. Let's see.
In the meantime, while we're just waiting for it to build, this person here is asking, will there be a template for all this? So to run MAUI applications with Blazor?
That's a great question. Yeah, people have asked for that. Several people have asked for that because it is, as you can see, there's some labor here to shuffle things around and fix up paths. It might be nice to have a template that is set up with both like a server, like a web app and a MAUI app with the Razor class library already set up for you so that you can work in this pattern if this is what you want to do. We don't have a template currently planned for the initial MAUI release. And even for .NET 7, we're not really expecting to put in a new template that is specific to this pattern, but we can absolutely put up sample apps, and we have various sample apps out there that show how to do this. And if someone wants to take that and turn it into a template, that would be fine. We've currently optimized around, I want to build this kind of app. Give me a simple template for doing that. I want to build a MAUI app. Okay, here's a .NET MAUI Blazor app. I want to build a web app. Okay, here's the various web app templates. These crossover scenarios don't currently have a template for it, but it's fairly easy to set up either a sample or a community template to do that. Okay, so this all seems to be working. So we got all our styles back and everything's now wired up. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just to add on to that question there, also just clarifying, say a template for the MAUI Blazor WASM application, or would that not really be recommended?
Well, it depends what that means. if you're asking like, I want a Blazor WebAssembly app and a .NET MAUI app and a Razor class library that has components that they're both using, that would be very similar to what I'm doing here, but just with Blazor WebAssembly instead of Blazor Server. So that, that pattern would look very, very similar. There is, if you're asking instead, like, I want to be able to take a Blazor WebAssembly app and shrink wrap it in a .NET MAUI app, that is something you can do. But I would kind of ask why. Like, why would you do that why would you run your components on WebAssembly instead of just running them on the normal .NET runtime that you have right there? Like, you're running on .NET in MAUI, so you don't need the WebAssembly runtime. Why have two runtimes when you can use just one? So that's why we are shipping this Blazor Hybrid support.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. So that's the web app. It's all factored up and ready to go. Now we want to actually get the MAUI project working. I probably need to move a little bit faster. So I'm going to let's reference the Razor class library now from our MAUI project. Okay. And then in the MAUI project, instead of this main component, we want to use our Razor class library app component. So I'm going to add in, this is how you define namespaces in XAML. If you haven't seen XAML before, it's kind of interesting. You do these XML-based namespaces. So that looks like the namespace we want, and then we say RCL, and the tooling is nice though, like it does help you. So that's the component we want to render. And then this index HTML file, that's the root HTML document that the .NET MAUI Blazor app is going to render. There's probably some stuff that we need to do in there also to fix up paths and such. So let's go look at that. So in the MAUI app, we have a www root folder. Go to index.html. Let's see. Yeah, we got a path to some bootstrap things. We're probably going to want to use that path. Same thing for this. And I think it's actually called site CSS in the web app. Yep. So these are the paths that the MAUI app was using for local styles. We're now going to pull the styles from the Razor class library. And just to make sure that it's not pulling locally from the MAUI project, we'll delete this CSS folder too. Okay, and so if we run on MAUI now, did I do it right? I don't know if I did it all right. Let's see. Let's run on Windows. Oh, got a namespace error. Yep, I used to have this MAUI app1.data. We don't have that anymore. Instead, we've got Razor class library.data. So our weather forecast service can still be registered in the MAUI project. That's how we're getting our weather forecast data. Looks like we're deploying. Voila! That was pretty quick. Like once the refactoring took a little time, but once you've got it done, like reusing those components is not too bad. So we're pulling in our components from the Razor class library that were originally in Blazor app 11, and those are pulling from our Razor class library with the Razor class library component. So that looks great. And this should work on mobile as well. Mobile takes a little bit longer to deploy, but hopefully when this deploys, we should see the same UI being shared across mobile, desktop, and web. And that's kind of the simple case. And the next we'll try and tackle a little bit more elaborate case, right, Tanay?
Sounds great. Yeah, and once again to highlight what we were saying earlier. Now, if you go ahead and make, say, a change within your counter.razor or any change at all for that matter, then that's automatically going to be applied to your, say, .NET MAUI Windows application, .NET MAUI Android application, as well as the web application. So it really simplifies the deployment and just maintainability and scalability of the application there.
Exactly. Okay, so we got desktop, waiting for the Android emulator. We've got web. Here's the website. And it looks like mobile is now just popping up. And there's mobile, desktop, web, all one app. That's the pattern. Okay, so that was the simple case. Let's try and do something now a little bit more elaborate. What Tanay and I spent a little time working on this past week, which was fun. Was taking this existing car checker app. And some of you who've been watching Blazor for a while may remember this app. I'm gonna close this VS. I don't think I need it anymore. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you're using .NET MAUI, you will need the latest Visual Studio Preview release. Right now, that would be 17.3 Preview 1. MAUI tooling is tied to the Visual Studio Preview train right now. MAUI will ship actually very, very soon, along with the Blazor Hybrid support. The tooling for MAUI, though, is still a bit of a work in progress. The tooling in Visual Studio, like all the stuff that integrates with the Android emulator and dealing with the multi-targeting that Maui projects do and all that stuff. That will ship with 17.3, but 17.3 is still a little bit out. Like we're just shipping preview 1 right now. So sometime, I don't know, June, July. They roughly ship quarterly is when all the Visual Studio updates go out. Okay, so let's move over to this project. This is Car Checker, and I'll just go ahead and run it. This is a Blazor WebAssembly app. It's not a Blazor server app. This is an app that Steve Sanderson built way back when, I think when we were first shipping Blazor WebAssembly to show off a bunch of Blazor WebAssembly features. If you don't remember this app, the idea is you're like an attendant at a rental car company and someone's returned their car and you need to like scan the license plate number or type it in or whatever. And it's got autocomplete, and then it pulls up this little UI so that you can record any damage that has been done to your car. It's got this cool 3D rendering over here, and you can click on parts of the car. Let's say I want to add a note about this wheel, and you can say what's wrong with it, completely missing, and then you can add an image. You can imagine this being actually, a camera that you take a shot of. And here it's just a file upload. You could save that, and now we've got a new note added to our car, and that syncs to the database, syncs back to the server. If we look at that car again, hopefully we'll see there's all our notes for that car. So you can.
I wonder how you drove that car in that case. Where's the wheel?
On 3 wheels. Yeah, you can record the mileage. If you put something garbage in here that's not actually like a negative number, I think it does validation. So this was just showing off a whole bunch of Blazor features. You can record how much the gas tank has. This is a web app. And it actually has a bunch of native client-like capabilities. You may have seen up above that this is also a progressive web app, so you can install it on the machine as a web app. It has a service worker, so it will like cache data in using IndexedDB in the browser in case like you lose your network connection. Like if you're out there in the parking lot and way out in the middle of without any cellular network access, then you can store all the notes locally and then sync them up to the server after you're back in network access. It's got a whole bunch of cool features, but what if we want to actually turn this into a native client app and actually take advantage of native client functionality? That's what we're going to try and do with Car Checker. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, so this is our app. It is running and working. What's the first step? So first, let's go ahead and add our .NET MAUI project like we had before. And we're going to need a Razor class library for all of our components. So new project, .NET MAUI app, .NET MAUI Blazor app, because that'll have the Blazor Web View control already in it. And let's call this carchecker.maui. And I thought I cleaned all that stuff out. Let me go and do a quick clean XDF on my folder and clean. The files are locked for some reason.
While you do that, Dan, we just have a question in the chat asking, can we deploy this to the Apple App Store and Android Store? So definitely, you can go ahead once you fully publish the application and all that kind of stuff. You can definitely go ahead and deploy it to a bunch of locations, including the Apple App Store and Android App Store.
Perfect. Yes, these are just normal native client apps. All right, now we should be able to do carchecker.maui. What? How can that be? 1 second. 1 second. Delete. Is that because? I have a carchecker.maui folder that is refusing to disappear. I guess I'll just name it something else. Something else then. Let's add new project, and we'll do carchecker.native or hybrid. How about hybrid? Okay. Create that. And
this
then,
is proof that the demo is live.
Yeah, we're doing this live, folks. Now it's also at our Razor class library. That's our new project. Add a Razor class library. And still using preview bits, carchecker.components. That's what we'll call this. Let's create that. Okay. And so we want to move all of our components currently live in carchecker.client. That's the Blazor WebAssembly app. We want to move all that into carchecker.components. And then we want to reference that from our hybrid application, hopefully get everything working. Okay, let's see if we can do that. So we're going to do similar steps to what we did before. Let's kind of purge these two projects of stuff we don't need. This kind of speaks to work that we want to do in .NET 7, which is to actually have empty templates that don't have all the sample code, so that you don't have to be going around deleting a whole bunch of things. Let's get rid of that. So I'm removing just the weather forecast stuff and the pages from the MAUI app. Let's remove the shared layout components because we're going to pull those in from the other app. We won't need this, and we won't need that, or main.razor. So just getting rid of the default purple gradient Blazor UI from the MAUI project. And then from the components library, all we're left with is just an empty www folder. Okay, and so we hopefully now should be able to copy in a bunch of stuff from the client app. Let's get the pages. Now here we don't have any CSHTML files because this is just a Blazor WebAssembly app. It doesn't have any server-side rendering set up in it because it's going to run on the client. So we can just grab all of that. We'll grab the resources. This has got like a localization set up. Let's share that one and that one. I think we want all of those. And let's put those in our components folder. And again, next step, like we had before, is we're going to need to go through and clean up some namespaces. So instead of carchecker.client, this will be carchecker.components. So we'll go ahead and update all of that. And yep, I don't think we have a card checker shared here. And we're not going to use, oh, I'm going to need some dependencies as well. Okay, and let me just also change these two types. I think also have a namespace that should be components now.
Mm-hmm.
And this type as well also is going to be in the client namespace if we don't change it. So we'll just change it all. Okay, great.
There's an error on line 1, I believe.
Error on line 1. Thank you. Get rid of that. Oh, but actually, no, hold on. That's actually okay, because one thing I forgot is so the client is already depending on a shared class library. Like there's a bunch of types for vehicles and vehicle parts that are being used in this carchecker.shared library down here at the bottom, which is one of the great things about Blazor, right? Is you can have .NET types and logic that you can use both on the client and on the server. No need to try and replicate all that in JavaScript. So what we're really going to want to do is add a project reference from client to components. And then we can probably remove this reference to shared because we're going to add that reference instead to carchecker.components. So add project reference here to shared. So that way we can actually go back into imports.razor, and we probably do want carchecker.shared in here for the shared data types. Okay, and we've got all these other things in here that are saying like, hey, I don't know what this is. What's scene viewer? What's this localization? That's because there's a bunch of packages that the Blazor WebAssembly client depends on that we haven't actually pulled into our components library yet. So we're going to need to pull all those over as well. I'm just going to copy them all, and then we'll trim them out a little bit to the ones we don't need. Let's stick them right in here. Okay. What is this scene viewer thing? This is the little package that Steve Sanderson wrote for doing the 3D rendering. That 3D rendering is actually a Blazor wrapper, .NET wrapper around 3D.js for doing those 3D renderings of cars. So we're going to need that because we want to still render the cars. We're going to do validation, so we'll keep the data annotations validation package. We're not doing WebAssembly, so I think we can remove these two. The WebAssembly reference can stay in the client package, in the client app. We'll keep the localization logic, extensions HTTP, system and HTTP JSON. Those are all just fine. So we'll keep all that. And that should make a bunch of our namespaces that we were complaining about before should now clean up. Let's double check.
A few folks in the chat are actually suggesting a new Visual Studio feature that if you right-click on the project, then there should be a sync namespaces option. And that does all this magic for you. So brand new feature in VS, I guess.
I do recognize there may be even some refactoring gestures that I should be using if I was more of a VS Power user. So if all you professional devs out there that are cringing as I like manually copy things around, I'm sorry. I probably go ahead and shout out suggestions on better tooling for doing that if you know of better ways. We're not going to use the WebAssembly HTTP based client because we're going to be running in a native client app which has a normal HTTP stack, so we can get rid of that namespace too. Okay, let's see, how are we doing? Can this thing build yet? Our component library. That actually built. Amazing. I think that actually built. Okay, what about
the level of surprise in your voice is just great.
And the client built too? There's no way the client built. There must be something that's missing. How did the client build? Because I thought I needed at least to change something in here. Do I not need to change anything in here? Like this app? Oh, it's because I didn't delete a bunch of stuff out of the client yet. So we need to still finish purging. So let's get rid of all the stuff we copied over. Get rid of that. Let's get rid of that, and that. Nope. Okay, now we got errors again. Okay, so now we're talking. So these namespaces change because we moved the library. Let's get rid of that. This app component is now coming from our component library. So it looks good. How about now? Are we building now? Okay. Okay. Does it work? Let's see if the application, the web app is totally busted.
So just to clarify right now, what you did was actually start the server. So alongside the front-end UI for this application, there's also a separate server that actually handles the API and like the backend sync and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to clarify on that.
Good point. Yeah, this is a ASP.NET Core hosted Blazor WebAssembly app. We have the Blazor WebAssembly part that's going to run in the browser on a WebAssembly runtime, .NET running on the client. But there's also .NET running on the server. We have an ASP.NET Core backend with all the APIs that the Blazor WebAssembly app is calling. And while it's like serializing data back and forth, it's able to reuse all the same data types and all the normal HTTP client calls, system text JSON HTTP library, all that good stuff. Okay, so this looks like it may have actually worked. I mean, that seems right. Let's see if we can save a change. I'm changing it to, this is car 100 HJU, and I'm saying it's got half a tank. Could not sync. Why were we not able to sync? So we still have an error someplace. What was wrong there? 500 on the details. Oh, what's the error? That means we got an error in our console log.
Yeah.
Now, sequence contains no elements. Sequence contains no elements. I have no idea why that was. That should have just worked, right? Let's see. This is in the vehicle details controller. I'm not sure on this one. So this means we got into the vehicle controller, and then something failed on the database side. Is this because maybe we changed something on the DB?
Can you open up a vehicle controller on the server just for a second? I want to double check something. Okay, scroll down, please. Okay, we should be good there. I may have been making some minor changes. So I just wanted to make sure those weren't causing issues.
Is it possible that my existing, like I had an old app.db file and I applied the server changes. I don't remember if I purged that. Maybe I need to rerun migrations on it. Let me try that real quick. Maybe that'll help. Let's try that. But then again, we just ran it without the component moved over, and it ran just fine, right? As far as I could tell, unless I didn't notice an error and it was erroring out when we were saving things. Let's try this one more time. Where to go? Oh, here. Okay. Oh, still, so that didn't even like. I'm not on a details page here. That's kind of weird.
If you do a hard refresh, is that
might be cached? This is what we kind of want to do. We want to make this real. Obviously this is not super scripted. Could not send edits. Unsent edits. I've got unset. I mean, let's try this. Let's try purging the local, because this is storing data locally. So like there is data sitting around in IndexedDB. We clear that out. And then let's do a hard refresh again. Really stable. Okay, so we were able to pull down, this says last updated down here in the corner. That means we were able to pull down the vehicle data. And let's look for that car, a car. And let's see if we can save stuff now. So this is 101 DCY, half a tank. Okay, that worked. So I think we just had a bad database then that was like not synced with the latest changes that we made to the demo. So yeah, that's saved. Everything seems to be working. Now, I think we didn't actually update the static assets. Like the client is still pulling a whole bunch of stuff from its own www folder that we're probably going to want to share with the Maui project. So again, let's copy a whole bunch of www stuff over. So this 3D folder has a bunch of stuff that's used for the rendering of the cars. We're going to need all that. We've got the CSS styles. I think the favicon can stay. I don't think we need the icon. Maybe we need, I don't know. Let's just grab it.
We don't need the icon right now, but we could always say use that icon for the actual app icon. So if you're publishing to the Apple App Store or Android App Store or anything like that, then exactly.
Yeah, these IDB.js and local vehicle store.js files, those are for interacting with IndexedDB. That's the part where we're saving data locally in the web application. That part, sorry, was done with JavaScript. We don't have a .NET. Maybe there's a .NET library out there now that interacts with IndexedDB that you could just use. Don't know. Go ahead and take a look around. The service worker is just for the web app. We won't need that. The manifest.json, that's a web manifest to make it a PWA. Again, we won't need that, so we'll leave those there. Okay, let's pull these other things then into root in the components library, and then we can delete them from here. So we'll delete that one, delete that one, and I think those are the ones we want to get rid of, right? Okay, and that will probably now break a bunch of links again. So let's go back in here and see if we can find where those links are being used, like this app.css. That's probably going to be content car checker dot, what do I call it, components /css. That's the magic path when you want to reference a static asset from another library. We got a bunch of script files down here. Let's update those so that we can pull those in. Is there anything else here?
So again, the reason why you need to update all these paths within your index.html is because you moved all these files from the main project into the shared component library, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Okay, we've got styles. That looks good. Let's see if we can look at a car. That actually looks fine too, which surprised me a little bit. Let me see if we do a full refresh. That should not have worked. Why did that work?
Take the win, Dan.
No, but the path to these 3D files is different now. So I would have expected we would have some issues with that in the car view, right? That should have been. I feel like we must be running some sort of cache thing then, if that's why. Starting up to-dos. Let's restart this real quick and see. Just make sure that we have cleared out the cache. Let's do F12, clear site data, and let's do a full refresh. So now if I do this, aha! That's what I expected. Okay, so we had some cache files that we were pulling in. I mean, it's all HTTP, so normal caching rules apply. Where did our car go? Well, that's because the scene viewer is relying on some of those static web assets as well, and that's in one of our Razor files. So let's go find that. So if we go into, what is it, the vehicle editor, I think? Yeah, the scene view component has got these paths that have been coded to those web assets. So we gotta fix this too. So this should be content. Car checker components. And then looks like this is also a path as well. Okay. Let's restart. And see if that does what we expect.
Okay. While you're doing that, we do have a question in the chat about hot reload support with Blazor Hybrid.
There, now it's working. Yeah, so Blazor Hybrid Hot Reload is in the works. There may be some scenarios, I think even with, I can't remember if it's 17.3 Preview 1 or 17 Preview 2, but I have played with builds that it actually has the functionality in it. So yes, we will support Hot Reload in .NET MAUI Blazor apps where you can change your codes, save, and have it apply and refresh in the Blazor web view. It will be for the initial tooling release, like in 17.3, it will require debugging. So you'll have to F5 to get the hot reload support. That's because MAUI itself requires debugging in order to handle all the hot reload tooling. So it will be F5 only, but yes, it will be supported in .NET MAUI Blazor apps.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure you're right on that. It's Visual Studio 17.3 Preview 1. That should have it, if I recall correctly.
Okay, great. So that seems to be that our web app is now working again. So now let's add that to our MAUI project. So let's go find the hybrid, I guess is what we called it here. And we now need to add a project reference to our component library. And let's see how easy this goes. Let's then make sure that we're adding the right component to our Blazor web view. We've got our Blazor web view here. And let's do, instead of local, let's call this car checker. And we want car checker dot components is the namespace. And then this will be car checker app is what we want. Okay, and then we probably need to go in and fix up our index HTML file. The MAUI project has its own index HTML file. We're not like trying to put that file into the class library and share it. I mean, it has MAUI and Blazor Hybrid specific content in it. For example, this script at the bottom, notice this is blazor.webview.js instead of blazor.webassembly.js or blazor.server.js. So we need this HTML file actually to be hosting model specific, but the stuff that we want to be the same, that we will have to replicate. So let's see if we can get both index HTML files up side by side. Let's put this in another vertical group. Okay, let's see what we need to do. So this one is the MAUI one, looks like. Let's call this car checker. That looks fine. Then we'll probably want this style sheet in here instead of Bootstrap. We're not going to be using Bootstrap. All right, this one has an app.css. That's the one kind of what we just added. So we can just delete. This is the original app CSS from the MAUI project, which we're not using because we're going to use the one from the component library. So we can get rid of that. This pulls in any styles that are being used by that are component specific styles. Like if you have .razor.css, then those will get built and bundled into a single styles bundle, which is what this thing is referring to. Technically, this won't exist for our MAUI project because we don't have any components in the project and like directly in the project, so it doesn't have any styles, but that's okay. It's kind of harmless. And then before we were putting our components at this div, like with this ID of app, which is the new recommended way of doing it. This app, the web app that we're porting is a little old. It's using this old app tag, which honestly we probably shouldn't be using, but for this demo, it'll be good enough. So let's just go ahead and add that in. Then we've got the little error UI. We've got this. Now we've got a bunch of scripts that we're going to want to make sure that we also have. So we'll need that and that and that. We don't need blazor.webassembly.js because it's not a Blazor WebAssembly app, and we don't need a service worker. So let's put this over here.
Like just to your earlier point about maybe that's something we shouldn't be using. This is also realistic. Like if you have an application, this may be an application that you built over months or years or who knows how long. So there's chances that you may be using some deprecated APIs or some APIs which may have better alternatives available now. And that's kind of just part of like a growing framework as new features and functionality becomes available.
So the reason why that app tag matters is because when you're setting up your root components, you have to specify, well, what root components do you want? And where do you want me to render them? Where do we want Blazor to render them on the page? And in the latest Blazor templates, we use the pound app, like some element with ID of app. Previously, we used the app tag. I think there is actually a conflict with the app tag and like an existing tag or something like that. It's not a real HTML tag. We were just kind of using it, and that's why we moved away from it, because we didn't want to have any, random non-conformant HTML sitting in your Blazor documents. So that's why using the div technically is better, but because I don't want to mess with all the style sheets in this app, I'm just going to update the selector to look for that app element instead of the div with ID of app. I think that's it. Is that going to work? Oh, services, right? We have some Maui program CS is where we would put all of the services we want to be available to the app. And we're not using a weather forecast service, so we can get rid of that. But we probably are using a bunch of services in the Blazor app. Yeah, we've got all of this stuff. So let's just, let's grab all that. We'll just grab all these things and put it in Maui program CS. Okay. And then we've got some namespaces we need to clean up. So this local vehicle store is going to come from our component library now. And then we have a URI. So this is what we're using to call our backend API controllers that are sitting in the ASP.NET Core project. When you're in a Blazor WebAssembly app, you're in the context of a browser. You know what origin you came from. So this was basically saying call back to myself when I'm making API calls. But now we're in a Maui project, like a native mobile app or a native desktop app. So there's no like server of origin here. We have to actually configure this address. Now, as a just a temporary thing, I'm gonna delete that. I'm gonna hard code this. I know you shouldn't hard code it, but to keep things simple, I'm just gonna put it right in here, and I'm just gonna put in the dev address of my server. So the 5001, I think, is the port, and then we'll put that right in here. And this isn't a perfect solution yet. We'll iterate on this a little bit, but I think other than that, we should now be good. We don't have that namespace. Everything else compiling. Okay, this is our Maui project build. Build started. That's riveting.
Everyone watch the build all at once.
The output says it's ready. Does that mean it succeeded? I don't know. I think it's just ready to further build. Those useful status messages. Thinking about it.
And it's going at it still.
I succeeded. Oh my goodness. Okay. So now let's change. Okay, I need the server running because the app is going to call the server, right? And then I need to I want to run the hybrid, the Blazor .NET MAUI Blazor app. And I'm going to do it on Windows first. Windows tends to be a little faster. Let's see if that actually does the thing. Fingers crossed for luck. That's so cool. Okay. Can we see a car? We can see a car. Can we save stuff? Make this empty. This is car 101 DCY. So save this. 101 DCY. And it's still empty. Great. I think we had an issue with our notes there, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. All right, cool. So that's working on Windows. And now let's see if we can get it working on Android. So let's put this down here and run it on Android. Now, there's going to be a problem on Android. I don't know if anyone on the call already knows what it's going to be. Feel free, shout it out. While it builds and deploys.
Okay. Just seeing if there's any quick question we can answer.
Okay. Well, we have this issue here. Could not sync. So it wasn't able to sync. Why is it not able to sync? So what's the syncing? The syncing is it's calling the server and saying, please give me all the vehicle data, pulling down on a big JSON blob, and then storing it locally. In this case, actually in the browser using IndexedDB. Why was it not? It was able to do that in the Windows app. It's not able to do that in the Android app. And the reason is because of the emulator. So we're running in an Android emulator, and the emulator is kind of like a little VM. It's its own little machine. So localhost at least as far as I understand. Localhost within the Android app on that emulator means the Android app. And there's no ASP.NET Core app running on the Android app. Okay, so what do you do? There's a couple different options here. One option is the Android emulators do have a special feature where there's a special IP address. It's like 10.0.2.2, which it will tunnel out to localhost on the host machine, like on my machine. So then it would presumably be able to connect from the Android app running on the emulator to my host machine. You could do that. The couple of issues with doing that is, first of all, by default, the Android app is going to require that request happens over HTTPS, which is fine. We love HTTPS, right? Like we've been using HTTPS. That was the address I put in when I ran it on Windows. Sure. However, the app will also check the certificate trust chain for the HTTPS endpoint that you're talking to. Now, for development in the ASP.NET Core, we set up a development certificate, an HTTPS development certificate. That's just a self-signed cert. We do set it up as a trusted certificate on the machine where you're doing development, but it's not going to be trusted in the Android emulator. So a sequence of events that often happens here is you try to make a web API request from your Android app and it fails because you're sitting in the emulator and you're trying to call localhost. That doesn't work. You go onto the web and you find out, oh, I can use 10.0.2.2. You try that, and then you get certificate trust errors saying you're trying to connect over HTTPS and I don't trust that certificate. So at that point, you have one of two options. You could configure the app to ignore the certificate errors, or you could configure the app to no longer require HTTPS and instead use plain text, like just do it over HTTP and then use an HTTP address. Both those things are possible. To turn off the requirement for HTTPS requires dumping some XML into the Android app someplace. To turn off certificate errors, usually you do that in code, like you go into the HTTP client's like handler thing and like turn off the certificate trust chain checks. Neither of them are great options. So there's a new option that Visual Studio just recently enabled, which is kind of cool, which is built-in support for port tunneling. If you go into the latest Visual Studio preview, so 17.3 preview 1, and go into tools, options, into preview features, up here at the top is, where is it? Enable, load projects faster. Did I already miss it? This one. Enable port tunneling for web applications. What this will do is this will basically set up, when you run your app, it will run it through a relay, like in the cloud. It'll set up an endpoint in the cloud that both the app and the browser can connect to and then be able to talk to each other. And it will have HTTPS enabled. So this is a very convenient feature for doing things like if you need an address other than localhost, or if you just need to punch through some boundary like this in order to accomplish development. It is in preview, and it's actually in private preview. So if you want to try it out, you're going to need to go to this address, aka/tunnels signup, and ask for permission to be able to use the feature. I have access to it, so I can use it. When you want to turn it on, all you got to do is we go to our, in this case, we're going to go to the server project, because that's the one we want to connect to. That's what's actually running on localhost 5001. And we're going to the properties launch settings.json, and we add a couple of properties on here. We're going to add this to our run profile. We're going to add create tunnel true, and then I give it a name. And in this case, I'm going to call it card checker demo. Okay. And if I do that, type string. No, I don't think that's type string. I don't know why it's asking that to be type string. Okay, I'm going to assume that that's just wrong. Let's set it up now to run the server project and run this again. And this should just run our server app one more time. But this time, no, that didn't work. That didn't work. Why did that not work? I'm running the server project. This is in launch settings.json in the server project.
It says your server is already running. Maybe that's causing some sort of conflict.
Maybe it actually does. Oh, maybe.
Yeah. Let's try that.
No, it's not.
Oh, you're in the environment variable section. Is that why?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yep. Sorry, everyone. That's why.
Thank you.
That's why we're getting schema warning. So it was right. Trust Visual Studio. It knows. All right, let's run this again. And then once this pops up in the browser, there we are. Okay. So now instead of running at localhost 5001, it's actually bouncing off of this address, this car checker demo, which is the part I controlled, and then this thing. Okay, but it still works. All the same functionality is there. Looks good. Yep. Okay.
And this is the same server that you have locally. All it's doing is just forwarding the port. The server is still running locally.
That's right. Exactly. So now we can use this address as our base address. I have to leave this running. Let's leave this running. Let's go into our Maui program CS and change to that. Now we should be able to run our hybrid app on Android, and it should work.
Cool. And this is now going to handle everything with, like, say, the SSL certification, certificates, and all that kind of stuff for you.
Updating. Boom! Succeeded. See that? Okay, yeah. So because it's an HTTPS address, it's not. I mean, the Android app can connect to the network. Like we have a, you can emulate the network connection in the Android emulator using your host machine's network. So connecting to that external address just fine. A lot of times, and Tanay we were talking about how to demo this, and he's like, "Well, we could just deploy to Azure, like and that's things people do, right? They publish the back end to some public endpoint someplace, just simply so that they can do local development with the Android emulator. With this feature, you won't have to do that, which is yes. Yeah. And so I see the chat. Could you put that server on Azure? Yes, you could put that server on Azure, and that would work as well. I was trying to do all local development though, and this should now work here as well. Yeah, we got our car. Looks great. Okay, so that means we've got mobile, desktop, web. Where's my desktop? Let's get this all set up here. Mobile, desktop, and web now all running with that same set of Blazor components. It took a little work, but not too bad. 30, 40 minutes or less, we were able to take our existing web app and turn it into native client applications. And because this is now a native client app, we can actually use like native features. Like right now, the way this is syncing the data locally to these native client apps is it's still using the browser. It's actually still using that IndexedDB script that Steve Sanderson wrote like long time ago. But we don't have to do that anymore. Like we could use something like a proper data store in the client app. Like we could use SQLite client side with Entity Framework Core on top of that. And that's something that that Tanay was working on and helping me set up in this application. I know we're way over on time, so I'm just going to sync to a commit, and then I'll show that real quick. Let me stop all the apps so that my sync doesn't.
We have about 10 minutes, 8 minutes or so remaining.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to try, and I think on this one I'm not going to try and do it manually. It involves a little bit more changes, but the point is still cool. So I'm gonna just move to this other branch where we've got this already set up.
While you do that, someone here is asking what to use for the base address in the released app that's going to be uploaded to the App Store. So what we're doing here is just tunneling the local server so that we can use it within the application. When you're actually releasing the application, at that point, you definitely want to have that published somewhere, like onto a server, onto Azure, or something along those lines, so that it's actually accessible by everyone and everyone isn't just connecting to your local machine. Theoretically, that could work, but that's probably not a great idea.
Sorry, just trying to move to my other branch. I'm in a little trouble. Can you get, Dan? Can you get? Yes, I can get. Okay, great. Okay. Let's see. So this is the same app, but now instead, my hybrid. Right. Let's remove the. Why is that still?
I'm just gonna answer a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead. You can keep going while I get this cleaned up again.
So this person here is asking, can the Maui app run on Android and Apple TV? So Android is definitely supported. Apple TV, as far as I know, is not supported at the moment. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Apple TV? Is that what it was asked for?
Yes.
I know they just added Tizen support. I'm not sure on Apple TV. Let me look what we got on platforms here. Windows, Tizen, Mac, iOS, and Android. I'm not sure on Apple TV. There may be community projects that are kicking off for that. Like I know like in the same thing with Xamarin, like there's the stuff that Microsoft ships directly, and then there's the stuff that the community then adds on top. But I'm not aware of Apple TV support directly. I think Tizen though runs on TVs. That's a Samsung TV operating system, I believe, right? Okay. This is now an updated version of the MAUI project, but instead of using IndexedDB, if we look in our components library, we're now referencing
Entity Framework Core.
Microsoft. Core, yes. Yeah. Like, where is it? There it is. SQLite from components. And if we look at how the data synchronization is all happening, the data local vehicle store for this app, this used to have a bunch, I didn't show up before, but this used to have a bunch of JavaScript interop calls into IndexedDB. And now it's using a database context and making all sorts of SQL calls effectively to a local SQLite store. Okay. But this now works too. So if I need the server running, let's get that running as well.
Yep. And if you just open up Data Synchronizer for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So here you can actually see how we're using the Entity Framework application database context, and then we're manipulating the context to add and remove vehicles, do synchronization logic with the server, and all that kind of stuff as well.
My server failed to start. Current database while saving change. What is it? Is this because say stop the server? Server is stopped. Okay, delete the database. Let's try. Run this again. Oh no, I don't know why that's failing now. I was able to start the server previously.
Oh, is this because of the tunneling that we incorporated?
I don't think so. Like this is just like me running the server project, and the server project is failing. See. Yeah, this is the part, by the way, folks, this is the part that Tanay and I were trying to get working like right before the session. So this is the thing. Well, you might have to just trust us on this one. I'm going to try one more time. Let's see if I can reason about what this error is saying. This is saying, oh no, what? Maybe we're right.
There you go.
Maybe it was the port tunneling that was just like, I mean, the port tunneling is a preview feature, so maybe it was just having a hiccup. Okay. So that works. And then now if we go to the MAUI project and run, let's just run on Windows. We should now have a version of our web app that's running in a native client app, but using SQLite and Entity Framework Core. What? Wait. Oh, no. Yeah, this file was locked for some weird reason. There's something holding on to this. Maybe if I uninstall from here. Where is it? Apps. Car checker. That's that one. Maybe it is this one. So uninstall. I'll install this one too. Okay. No. Yeah, there's something that's holding onto this file. Like this was why when I kept trying to switch branches, it was not letting me because this file was locked up for some reason. Maybe if I close VS down, maybe it's VS that's doing it.
We can try killing all the .NET processes, but we're kind of short on time right now. Someone here is just asking, will the source code for these demos be available?
Yes, I do have a public car checker repo on my my GitHub account. All right, which ones do we want to kill here? We want to kill
anything .NET.
I don't see any. I don't see any .NET anything. I've uninstalled all of the car checker apps. I don't have any car checker apps here. Let's restart it. Let's see if we can get this now to work. So now I need to restart the server. This is gonna work. Make sure the server comes up. My build succeeded. Server goes up. Okay, good. And then let's do the Maui project. Windows. Good. Please deploy. Deploy started. Deploy succeeded.
Succeeded.
See, everyone who's at the end are like, you all should feel vindicated. Like all those people who left are like, I don't know if this is ever going to work. Oh no! Wait, what? What? No, that should work. Oh, I don't know why it didn't sync though. Is it just because that first one? No. Well, at least we can see it running. We have seen it work. That's probably something with the port tunneling again. I don't know if I got the wrong address again. Well, I think we're going to call it good on that. So the point here is that you can swap in native client features. You can use SQLite, which is what we're using here, and native framework, and light that functionality up in a native client app. You can even add like native UI if you wanted to add like a barometer or compass or geolocation. Those are APIs that Maui actually just provides out of the box. So you can just call into those things from your Blazor components and light that functionality up on the client. And with that, I think we're gonna call it good there, Tanay. I think that's
for sure. And just to add on to that, like there's so much native functionality you can leverage. Anything from something like accessing the camera, location, even doing biometric authentication to actually access your application. A lot of this functionality isn't necessarily available or isn't available in a first-class manner for web applications. So using .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid, you can have access to a lot of this wonderful functionality. I think that we're right at the time we should be. So Dan, thank you so much for the demo. It was excellent as always. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you got to learn a bit more about .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid and a lot of the wonderful functionality which will be coming your way. So thanks all and have a great day.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.